Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei got married with Rias' mother Venelana part 1. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video. Go support and follow the Nefarious doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story, link in the description. Let's start this video. Issei was floating within an endless abyss as he looked at his chest to see the massive gaping hole within it. A mark to show the world how a woman killed him he thought loved him back. If this is karma for all the shit I've done at my school, then I deserve it, but being betrayed by a girl I thought loved me was something I wasn't expecting, Issei said as he felt tired and wanted to go ahead and close his eyes as he waited for his life to slip away until a voice woke him up. Wake up. The voice shouted as Issei looked and saw a bright light fill in the darkness as many strange objects floated around him, but one particularly stood out. It looked like a mix between the model of an atom and the solar system. Except it glowed blue. And the rings revolved around the orb. Where am I? The afterlife? Or is this a dream? Issei spoke to himself. Neither, little child. This is a place that I created to speak with you. The orb glowed as it talked to Issei, which shocked him, even though he had just met a fallen angel and learned of the supernatural just a few hours ago. Okay, so what am I doing here, and why did you know? Why did Rainer kill me? Issei questioned as he still couldn't understand her reasons for killing him, since he wasn't anything special. He is an average regular guy whose unique skill is his mind and lust. The truth is that the fallen angel known as Rainer killed you, so you didn't unlock your sacred gear that would possibly be a threat to their people. But I didn't even know of this power until now, so why kill me if I didn't know about my sacred gear? Also, what is a sacred gear? The orb chuckled as it replied to him. Simple. Sacred gears are weapons given to humans to defend themselves from supernatural forces. Well, a lot of good it did me. I lost my family, my life, and my heart. Issei said as he felt more alone until the voice spoke to him again. And that is why I brought you here. Do you recall your dream before wanting to become a harem king? The voice asked as Issei pondered this question as he remembered when he was a kid and played with his old childhood friend. Oh yeah. I wanted to be hero. I remembered that day very well. Issei said as he had a melancholic look on his face. It was the day before Rin moved away with her family. Rin didn't want to leave me alone, but I told her I'd be fine and remembered that we made a promise to each other. A promise that we were going to be heroes in the future. Flashback. Hey Issei. Let's go check out some of the stands here in the carnival. Issei would follow him when a specific stand caught the boy's attention. The Throne of Heroes. Shrugging, he walked over to it and was immediately greeted by an old man who quickly offered Issei a seat. Hello, boy, what can this humble magician do for you? Greeted the man. I was just wondering what this stand does, Issei replied as the man gained a smug smile. We make heroes, child. Would you like me to do the same to you? Issei's eyes widened and he nodded eagerly. He wanted to become firm, and heroes were strong, weren't they? He would do it so that when Arena returned, he would be strong enough to protect himself. He wouldn't have to rely on his friend to bail him out all the time. Very well then, let's begin, shall we? Grinned the man before he chanted something in a strange language Issei couldn't recognize and reached into his pocket to pull out several objects. The boy looked at the old man in confusion as he held up 7 cards that reminded Issei of tarot cards and placed them along the table. There are many types of heroes in this world, and I wonder which one are you, The old man then pointed at the first card, showing a knight with what looked like a claymore drawn and ready. First, there is the saber class, fighters whose skill with swords was so great that they rivaled even the gods. So they're like noble knights protecting the innocents? Asked Issei. The man frowned. Some are, but not all. Don't forget that knights aren't the only ones skilled with a sword, young man, and not all knights are noble. One is even called the Knight of Treachery. Even if they weren't noble, I'm sure they had reasons for doing what they did. Knights are people too, after all, argued the boy as he looked up to the old man with a determined expression, not noticing the saber card light up slightly at his reply. The man raised an eyebrow as he replied, indeed, they did have reasons, but what is better, boy? To do the wrong things for the right reasons or do the right thing for the wrong reasons? If you truly want to be a hero, you must learn this. The boy just frowned as he stared at the saber card, almost feeling his hand closing around the hilt of an imaginary sword before nodding in understanding. Seeing this, the old man moved on to the next card with a man holding a long spear ready to strike. Next, we have the Lancer class, heroes that, like the saber class, have mastered spears to godly levels. An amused grin spread across his face as he leaned forward and whispered to Issei, but just between you and me, they seem to have the worst luck of the bunch. Who needs luck when you have skill? After all, they wouldn't have been able to become heroes if something as minor as bad luck stopped them, replied Issei as he looked down at the Lancer card, the image of a blood-red spear appearing in his mind as he touched it. Quite so, agreed his companion, snapping Issei out of his daze and drawing his attention back to the conversation, the boy again not noticing a small light coming from the Lancer card. The man seemed to frown slightly in confusion as he examined the two cards, but the moment passed quickly, and Issei was left wondering if he had imagined it, as the old man moved on to the third card with a smile. Looking down at the third card, Issei saw it appeared to be a rider in some chariot, preparing to ride after his enemies. Now we come to the rider class. They are heroes who are known for their amazing mastery of mounted combat or have a mount so famous they can't be pictured without it, continued the old man. What does that mean? Asked Issei in confusion. I got it. When you think of Batman, what do you picture? Asked the man. Batman riding down the street in his Batmobile, chasing after the bad guys, the boy eagerly replied. Exactly. Batman would be considered a rider hero, he explained, giving Issei an approving nod. So I could be Batman, shouted Issei in excitement, drawing the attention of others celebrating the festival. Indeed, laughed the man before fixing a stare on Issei. However, be aware that riders are usually at a disadvantage in most fights. After all, most circumstances don't let them use their mounts. Issei just looked up at him with an eager smile as the feeling of reins appeared in his hands and he heard thunder booming. The harder the fight, the greater the prize. After all, that's what conquering is all about. Like the two before it, the rider card glowed softly at this while the man nodded as his grin grew more expansive and he led Issei over to the next card. When examining it, Issei saw what appeared to be a man with his bow and arrow drawn, sighting down on some imaginary enemy. This is the archer class, the masters of ranged combat. Give them a target and they will be able to hit it even from miles away. They usually are very independent of others, though, grinned the man, eager to see the response he would get. So they're like solitary hunters. The ultimate hunters can catch anything they put their minds to. Too wild and free to be held down by others and yet at the same time one of the loneliest heroes to exist, replied Issei sadly, as images of a lone figure hunting in the woods and running in foot races faded out of his mind. The older man nearly jumped for joy as he eyed the card beneath Issei's hand and watched as it glowed softly. The man then quickly drew the boy's attention to the next card before Issei noticed the light. The boy looked down and saw what appeared to be a cloaked older man holding a book of some kind and giving off a very wise aura. Next, the caster class embodies the best magic users ever. They can do spells that most mages today could only dream of, and then some, definitely not one to be looked down upon for its lack of physical strength, the man cheerfully explained. Magic is real, cried the boy in wonder. His companion nodded in amusement. That's right, and speaking from personal experience, it is advantageous. Wouldn't you want to use it too? Of course, then I could do my magic show. As his thoughts were filled with childish wonder at the possibilities. However, his thought soon turned into something good. He felt his body growing hot, yet it was comforting, almost like the sun. Following images of a tall woman wearing a dark cloak as she held up her staff and allowed magic to rain down from the skies above. Oh boy, shouted a male voice, snapping Issei back to the present as the man watched him with an intrigued expression. Sorry. I must have zoned out for a second, apologized the boy. His companion waved him off and pointed to the next card, causing Issei to freeze as he followed the man's gaze and examined the card. Issei frowned as he saw the picture of what could only be described as a horror or mad beast on the card. What is that? He asked fearfully. Now, don't be so quick to judge, criticized the old man with a smile. This is the Berserker class, heroes that have gone mad with grief, rage, or bloodlust. They are one of the strongest, but at the cost of their sanity. Heroes that have lost their loved ones. I know how that feels, replied Issei, looking at the card with sympathy. So you can understand why they did what they did? Questioned the man in surprise. The boy nodded with a weary look that didn't belong on a child's face. Yeah, honestly, I probably would have done the same. However, the boy's eyes widened as he saw the card glow, and a stone axe sword appeared in his hand before fading away. Another image appeared with a massive blue armor set with a sword in its hands, as said armor roared with a scream that shook the boy to his core. This alarmed Issei. He quickly looked up at the old man, who just smiled and continued to the final card, which showed a man with a skull mask performing a mid-air backflip. And finally, we come to the last one, the assassin class. Now I know what you are thinking, how could an assassin ever be a hero? Well, have you ever seen the Ninja Turtles? They are assassins, yet people still consider them heroes, he quickly explained, seeing Issei's horrified expression. Issei was silent as he just picked up the card and stared at it, clearly conflicted about the choice, until finally he placed it on the table and looked up at the man with a serious expression that completely contrasted his childish face. No one respects life more than someone who has to take it away. If I had to do it, I would never enjoy it, but at least I could make it painless, the boy said as the card gave off a soft glow, and as Issei looked back at the old man his eyes widened. For just an instant, he could have sworn he saw a tall purple-haired woman with many like her surrounding him until he blinked away the image. He frowned as the vision faded away while he let go of the assassin card. The man just laughed before he picked up all 7 cards and examined them with growing excitement. Incredible. I've only seen this in a few worlds, but I couldn't believe you are compatible with more than one, let alone all 7. Haha. Came Issei's reply to this apparently madman's ravings. The man smiled as he handed the 7 cards to Issei, who nearly dropped them as all 7 began glowing at his touch. Alright, boy, listen carefully, these cards will help you become strong enough to be a hero. Now, you need to pick one. So which will it be? What kind of hero do you want to become? He asked eagerly. Issei just looked at the 7 cards and frowned as he examined them. The 2 of them were silent for 10 minutes until the boy looked up at the man. So these cards will help me become stronger. Seeing the man nod, Issei continued, and I can pick any of them. And you'll give me the one I pick. That's right, replied the man, looking even more curious. Issei just put all 7 cards on the table and stared at his companion with a determined expression. Then I choose. Issei? Where are you? It's time to go. Issei's mother called out. Issei was so shocked that he didn't notice that the tent and the old man were fading away until the man watched Issei run back to his mother. How rude. And I was just about to hear his decision. Ah, well, there's always next time. I'm sure of it, and that's because this boy has much potential like his counterparts. The old man said as he chuckled and watched Issei return home to his family. In another timeline, Issei would have gotten the cards that would have helped him be a hero sooner, but not this time. Then flashback. Issei chuckled as he recalled the memory, but felt nostalgic that he had lost that memory after he tried to fill the hole in his heart after being alone for many years. Sure, Mitsuda and Motohama were his friends, and granted, they got into trouble together, but they were still great friends to him. But even though you made friends with those two, you still felt alone and couldn't make any other friends before meeting them. Right? The voice asked as Issei sighed but nodded in reply. Yeah. I only acted as a pervert to protect myself from those who didn't want to do with me, but I guess I got so caught up in the act that I completely forgot about my dream and ambition to become a hero. Issei said as he knew his reply was valid before the voice talked to him again. Do you genuinely wish to become a hero? Being a hero involves many responsibilities and hardships, especially when you must learn that life isn't a fairy tale. You must understand that even if you had all the power in the world, you can't save everyone, right? I know, but even if I can't save everyone, I'll save as many people as possible. I'll even save the villains from going down the darker path. But what if a villain is irredeemable? Would you still try to save them? If there's one thing I've learned about heroes and villains, it's that all heroes and villains are neither good nor evil. One of my favorite villains wanted to be a good guy who was powerless and wanted to be a hero like his idol, but sadly, the world he lived in shoved him aside and didn't support his dream except for a few people. Eventually, he finally got a breaking point and vowed to change the world, even if he had to become the story's villain. And so he did. He became the villain of the story and was able to bring those who were outcasts like him and show the world that their government was more corrupted than the victims who were labeled as villains and experimented on to become weapons of war. That's why I desire not to be the hero of the story or the final boss but a someone who walks down the path in the middle. A neutral person who doesn't wish to cause chaos and destruction or a goody two-shoes whose all friendship is power. Blech. Issei said as the voice was silent for a bit, which worried Issei until the voice replied to him. How interesting. You are different from him, who wished to be a hero of justice. I'm curious about how you'll become the hero you desire to be, so I'll give you powers to be a hero. The voice said. Issei was surprised by this before asking. Wait. Like real superpowers? Oh no. That would be boring. It'll allow you to keep your sacred gear, but with a twist. It'll be much stronger without the limiters on it. The voice said as Issei saw a purple ball in his chest. The wound mended together until the aura from the purple ball was still there. Also, I shall give you heroes of the past, who shall guide you through your journey. I'll give you the words to speak the incantation for the summoning process, but it is up to you to command them. Just remember that several beings in your world are like Rainer. People who like that take advantage of others and kill innocent humans just because they can. However, that doesn't mean all the supernatural are like Rainer. The voice said as a hand was outstretched and touched Issei's heart. He felt light enter his body until the voice spoke to him again. That light I gave you is the words that will help you with the summoning ritual. They shall teach you what it means to be a leader and will help train you if you ask them. These heroes are spirits of the past, so as long as you survive, they will not die permanently, they will return and await you to summon them again. Now, one last thing I should mention before I wake you up. What's that? You will be summoned back to the time your second year begins at Kuo Academy, a month before you met Rainer on that day. However, you can't tell anyone about your resurrection, for the timeline will have unforeseen consequences. Is that clear, Issei Hyaju? The voice asked in a stern voice before Issei nodded his head and replied. I'm in. So how do I begin the ritual? Issei asked as the voice giggled in reply. That's simple. Repeat the incantation. The words are in your mind, now they need power. The voice said as Issei found himself standing on a platform underneath his feet with a book in his hand. The book's pages flew open as if searching for something until it landed on a page for him to read. Summoning 101. How not to screw up your summon. Issei said in curiosity as he read the chapter title before looking at the book's title in his hands until the title appeared with the author underneath it. Becoming a Hero. By the world traveler Zelrich. What kind of a name is that? Issei asked himself before he looked back at the summoning ritual page before a piece of chalk flew out of the book and began to draw on the ground, which amazed Issei at the artistic design of it until he saw the chalk vanish into thin air. Whoa. This is unlike any magic circle I've seen in anime. Issei said as he looked at the words that told him what to do next. Prick my finger and let the blood fall into the circle, Issei said as he did so until he saw the circle glow crimson red as well as hints of purple in it until a shadowy aura enveloped the red as it blended with it as if assisting the ritual. Let silver and steel be the essence. Issei began as he felt the magic circle glow with power before continuing. Let stone and the Archduke of Contracts be the foundation. Issei chanted as he didn't mind the wind swirling around him and the shadows enveloping his own. Let black be the color I pay tribute to. Issei said as his eyes became bright purple until the shadows continued to envelop his legs as if they were being called to him. Let rise a wall against the wind that shall fall. Let the 4 cardinal gates close. The wind picked up as he said the words, but Issei didn't deter as he would give it his all and go beyond that. Let the 3-forked road from the crown reaching onto the kingdom rotate. Issei shouted as he felt the wind throw his hair back before the circle began to open a portal. Let it be declared now, your flesh shall serve under me, and my fate shall be with your sword. Issei then felt a spiritual connection to the one he was summoning, as if he was looking into their soul and vice versa, which made him feel happy. Submit to the beckoning of my call. The answer is if you would submit to this will and this truth. Issei shouted in a commanding voice as thunderclouds appeared in the sky and thunder roared in the air as Issei continued his chant. The shadows underneath him now covered his legs and arms before reaching his heart. An oath shall be sworn here. I shall attain all virtues of all of heaven. I shall have dominion over all evils of all of hell. Issei then saw a bright light as his vision blurred a bit thanks to the shadows surrounding his eyes until he felt tired as he collapsed on the ground from the overusage of magic for the first time in his life. Issei then looked up to see a figure standing in the middle of the circle. They appeared to have a feminine appearance while the smoke cleared away to reveal their face. Issei could barely move as he slowly stood up thanks to his shadow helping him until he spoke to the person. Hello. My name is Issei Hyadu. I'm the one who summoned you. May I have your name? Issei asked as the figure pondered their reply until speaking to him. I am the servant known as. Issei couldn't hear the name as exhaustion hit him tenfold. He collapsed before feeling a force catch him. Rest, my master. Rest for now before we talk more. The person said as they allowed Issei's head to rest on their lap before the scene changed around them. The voice giggled in reply with a particular troll. I knew this boy would be interesting, but still, I'm a bit worried about the book I gave him since it is sentient. Do not worry, Zelrich. It has taken a liking to him. Let's observe and see how this plays out. The voice that talked to Issei earlier said as it sent the servant and their master back in time to Issei's home. I can't wait to see what kind of king he becomes with his servants. This marked the beginning of the hero's journey, as he would have to be prepared for the trials that he would have to face in the future. Guo Town. Issei groaned as he slowly opened his eyes to see that he was back in his room. Issei slowly sat up, he thought it was all a dream until he looked at his clock to see that it was 6 in the morning, which amazed him, since he had never been able to wake up this early. Wait, if it was sent back in time, then Issei said as he headed to his calendar and looked at the date before his eyes widened at the day. It was a month before I met Rainer that day, so it did work. Indeed it did, master. A voice said. Issei recognized the voice, turning around to be greeted by the sight of a young woman with long purple hair and bright golden yellow eyes dressed in a yellow tank top, a pair of blue jeans, and an apron. Issei was stunned at seeing the girl as she was quite beautiful, the clothes enhancing and hiding her figure in a captivating manner, and her bountiful bounty attracting his eyes. The girl's beauty spellbound Issei. My, what a lecherous master I have. The woman's voice snapped Issei out of his dazed state as he stared at the girl before him. I do wonder what is going on in your mind, master. Is it some plan to ravage me or something more intimate and depraved? Issei ignored the questions posed to him as he focused on the way the girl was addressing him. Master? Issei asked, not sure what the woman meant. The girl seemed to have caught on to his confusion as she said, "It seems like you have forgotten who I am, my master. Maybe this would help." And like a shimmering image cast in water, the girl's visage changed, her head and body were covered by a massive black cloak as a staff appeared in her hands. "Wait a minute. You are the one I summoned back there, right?" Issei asked as he pointed to her, to which the girl smiled and nodded in reply. "Correct. I was sad you passed out after summoning me, but it makes sense since it was your first time summoning a servant. I'm glad you chose a caster as your first servant before the others." "Wait, others? What do you mean by that?" Issei asked as the girl chuckled in reply. "Well, do you remember those 7 cards at the carnival when you were 10? You were about to choose what card you wanted but were interrupted by your mother calling out to you, right?" The woman asked as Issei recalled the memory and didn't see the stand again until the woman shook him out of it. "However, even though you didn't say it, the 7 cards still resonated with your soul, which means you are still connected to them. Also, the older man who worked the stand. He knew you were going to choose all 7 of them." "Wait, he did? Then why not send them or give them to me before my mom called me?" A much more powerful force tied his hands, and trust me when I say there are many powerful beings in other worlds that are far more powerful than me. The girl said. Issei was shocked by this until she shook him out of it again as she sat on his bed. "Oh my. I should introduce myself. My name is Medea, the caster servant of my master Issei Haidu." Medea said as she introduced herself to Issei, who was stunned to hear that Medea, the witch of Colchis, was right in front of his eyes. "I feel like I'm going to faint, and yet I'm not doing so," Issei said as Medea giggled at the comment before she took Issei in her arms and hugged him with her chest squishing against his chest. This made Issei happy, and he blushed at the massive pair on her until Medea at Issei's, which shocked the boy until he felt warmth and comfort from the woman's heart. He let tears fall from his eyes as he cried in her arms, which made Medea wrap her arms around Issei and pull him closer, as if she wished to comfort him with her warmth. "It's okay, Issei. I'm here now, so there's no need to feel sorry for yourself. That crow manipulated you and played you, but now you have me, and eventually, the others will come, so don't worry about her and others trying to take advantage of you. I'll always be here for you, my love." Medea said as she at his head while Issei mumbled 2 simple words that strengthened the witch's resolve. "Thank you." The witch's heart melted as she heard these words and made a promise to herself that she wouldn't let that woman, who hurt the heart of her beloved master, come within 10 feet of him, and if Rainer ever tried to harm Issei, then the crow would feel the wrath of the sun itself. "Rest, my master. Rest, and let me comfort you," Medea said as she let Issei relax in her arms while shadows formed around them, as if the clouds wanted to give the two their privacy. The two decided to sleep for a bit longer as the master and servant began to enjoy the comfort of each other even more. An hour later. "Thanks again for comforting me, Medea. I'm glad I got a caring and kind servant like you," Issei said warmly, making Medea smile even more as she hugged his left arm while the two walked out of the Haidu home. It was a Saturday and the first day of his summer vacation, so Issei didn't have to worry about school. So, he decided to spend some time with Medea and better understand how to get stronger and work with Medea in battle. Medea meeting Issei's parents was an enjoyable and embarrassing experience since his mother was happy that Issei had found himself a girlfriend and would give them many grandchildren. In contrast, Goro merely gave Issei a salute of respect, which Medea enjoyed very much until Issei's mother brought out the baby photos, which made Issei groan in embarrassment as he had to bear witness to Medea gushing over the baby photos when Issei was little. "I still can't believe you walked around the house in your birthday suit when you were only a kid. What a naughty boy my master is." Medea said teasingly as Issei's face turned red from more embarrassment. "What is this? Tease Issei Haidu Day?" Issei asked himself until he felt Medea's left hand enter his pants pocket as the boy stiffened up and the woman found her target. "Oh my. You're packed, and I wouldn't mind teasing you if you offered me such a wonderful gift," Medea said as she whispered some naughty things in his ear, making Issei's face turn beet red while trying to hide his face. Medea smiled in glee, teasing her master again. "Aw. What a cute reaction. I wonder how you'll be in bed, though. Whoa there. At least let me buy you dinner before we get that far." Issei stuttered but spoke as Medea chuckled at the boy's reply before they went into the forest park where there was a large clearing. "Now that we're alone, it's time to begin your training. Now, I can't help you learn how to fight like a warrior, but I can help you in the magic area and unlock your unique magic," Medea explained as she sat across from Issei before the book that Issei had used before had been summoned forth and laid in his lap. "I remember this book, but I thought it was a one-time use," Issei asked as Medea shook her head in reply. "Nope. The book is a guide for beginner mages to understand magic, so it bonds to your body to help you when needed. Now tell the book what you want," Medea said as she watched Issei look at the book and tell it his question. How do I unlock my magic? Issei asked as the book shook as the pages within it flipped until it stopped on a page marked "How to unlock one's magic." Issei was surprised by this as he began to read it to himself, while Media watched in interest and allowed him to figure it out himself. First, I need to access my prana. I can feel it in me just waiting to release it, but I don't know how even to bring out my magic. Issei read the first instruction. The easiest and safest way to access my prana is to draw the ritual circle and meditate in the middle, so I focus on finding a trigger to help me access my area. Issei continued reading the following instructions before looking at origin magic. Now that got his attention as he was most excited to discover his origin. After all, it would dictate how he can use his magecraft. Origin is the starting point that defines one's existence and directs one's actions throughout life. The driving force from within the root has managed to stream out of the source and take on material form. The form it can take at times is that of a human being, and all humans match their actions to be in harmony with the driving force that originated them from the moment they entered the world. These actions are more like an inherent compulsion that could be called a person's instinct rather than a conscious decision. If a person becomes awakened to their origin, it becomes nearly impossible to stray from it if it's even possible in the first place. It becomes an impulsive behavior one would follow as though it were an absolute order. Under the system of magecraft, origins are used to describe precise details about a magus, while elemental affinity indicates one's general alignment. Magi with an origin that is strongly expressed outwardly are sometimes removed from the normal alignments, and there are times that the origin itself becomes the alignment. Most of those Magi exhibit their talents as extreme specialists, allowing them to reach higher grounds than normal Magi. Even those without an elemental affinity can sometimes still cast spells simply by following their origin. They can overcome obstacles such as a lack of circuits or talent for magecraft altogether. Issei looked at the circle on the same page and saw it was simple to draw. It was not too large, too, meaning he could remove one in his room and erase it later. What got him thinking was the trigger. He continued to read as he thought of the trigger. Please note that the trigger should be something the user is intimately familiar with and draws upon his greatest feelings and desires, yet requires intense concentration. Base desires like lust make for poor triggers, often leading to the magician using their magic at inappropriate times and causing undue damage. Well, there goes my idea of using breasts as a trigger. Issei sighed at the loss of his most obvious choice. Still, there must be others I can use. Issei gathered the needed components to draw the circle in his room. While he did the necessary preparations, he focused on figuring out a trigger. The most obvious choice is light them up, but it just doesn't give me much of a feeling, and frankly, it does not even make me think too deeply. Issei thought and discarded that phrase as his trigger. Issei Haidu will not know about Amiya or anything of Fate as a show franchise. So, I put something in from Genshin as an example. Like if Issei was trying to come up, I will have order from Zhongli. Unfortunately, even after an hour had passed when he had finished the circle, Issei had still not been able to find a decent phrase for him to use as his trigger. Phrases like Henshin Go Team Lagan Bankai etc. had not helped him even a bit. Hell, he even went with Raising Heart, setup which, while getting some reaction from the circle, still failed to make any decent progress. Issei was surprised that the circle was genuine and the surreal revelation of magic being real. He tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light and his mind, yet the circle glowed for 10 to 14 seconds, proving that magic was real. Thus, with a burning determination, Issei sought to pour his all into unlocking his prana. Still, who knew a magical girl's transformation phrase would help a boy like me? Issei chuckled at the strange yet exciting avenue of thought. While Issei had failed to use that phrase as a trigger, a thing that both disappointed and relieved him. Cause what kind of man would use a magical girl's transformation phrase? It showed Issei how to go about choosing his trigger. I have to think and pour all my emotions, not just my lust but also my curiosity, joy, awe, and even fear and hate, into the trigger. Issei recited the mental image of Nanoha, saying her phrase made him jump with joy and yet brought a bit of fear of her using those giant death beams of death. Man, this is going to be hard. And it was true, for an ordinary boy like Issei, who had not experienced many things, had only encountered one life-changing incident. The one with the perverted old man, it was hard to visualize something in which he could pour his heart. Sure, he could still use breasts as his trigger, but he could not pour his hate and fear into them. It was almost unthinkable for him to regard breasts as something monstrous, and he was not that deep into the internet community to see some of the more debased forms for him to make it a trigger. Sighing, Issei almost gave up on thinking of a trigger, but then something caught his sight. The poster of Zhongli from Genshin Impact. It was a poster that he had bought when MiHoYo released official wall posters of their popular game. He liked the game and loved the characters. The personalities he saw grabbed him. There was Kiking, the princess of Liu, who upheld her ideals of a world free of the gods' control. Then, there was Ayaka, a clan heiress from Inazuma who shouldered such responsibility for the good of her people, yet desired the friendship that either gave her. And, of course, there was Diluc, a fire-wielding badass who took it upon himself to uphold justice. But the one who grabbed all of his attention was Zhongli, the Geo-Archon of Order. He was the god of Liu and endured thousands of years of tormenting memories to protect Liu. Issei felt sad for him when he learned how he lost Gizhong, but he also felt so proud of how he was willing to give up his godhood for the sake of his people. His strength also amazed Issei. How could a man manipulate the earth as if it were his own to summon mountain-sized spears? Yet for all that power, he was still humble not to enforce his rule as a god. Issei could remember the words Zhongli spoke that he kept close to heart. I have no desire for dominion, but I cannot let the common folk suffer. A smile stretched Issei's face when he remembered Zhongli's phrase when he brought down the meteor. I will have order. Issei thought about how cool it would sound if it left his dot. Issei then turned to the poster of Gilderts from Fairy Tail. Issei deeply respected that warrior since he had a deep past that made him into the person he is today. Gilderts, the ace of Fairy Tail, as he stood tall and proud as he defeated Blue Note's stinger. Issei could still remember his two favorite quotes from the Crushed Magician as he spoke to Natsu and Blue Note. Fear is not evil. It is good to know your weakness. If you know your weaknesses, you can become stronger and also kinder. That's what is necessary to becoming an S-class. It was an important test. It meant more to these kids than any adult could ever imagine. This test represented their determination towards their futures, and you've stepped all over it. The circle glowed even brighter, feeding on his interest in the abilities and Gilderts. The bone was being cracked from an unknown impact. As the image played in his mind, Issei said the words that unlocked his dormant power like a dam bursting forth and filling every inch of his body, pushing the 15-year-old boy into the life of a magician. Break. And with that, his gate was unlocked. I'm impressed with what you did, though I have to say that some of the catchphrases you tried to do were interesting and downright hilarious. Especially the magic girl one. Medea said as she laughed at the one before. Issei groaned in frustration at using a magical girl's quote before looking at his hands and seeing magic flow within his body quickly. Issei then looked at a tree and decided to test it. He sent a right punch to the tree, which was knocked out of the ground after the impact landed on its target, which shocked and impressed Medea as she enjoyed this very much. Well, master, Medea said as she walked over to Issei, wrapped her arms around his neck and snuggled into his left arm. From what I have witnessed, its appropriate name should be Impact, since your origin seems to rely on your body. After seeing your magic, I've concluded that it all comes down to the concept of impact. So basically, I just punch things with my magic? Issei asked as Medea shook her head. No. Nothing like that. It's not as simple as a fist hitting a wall. An impact is anything that makes contact with a meaningful force behind it. It can be similar to a bump on the shoulder, a touch on a wall, a knock on a door, or even a fist punching as it is impacting the air. But this disassemble element you have within you, you can break down any defense, potentially making any defense-type magic useless against you. It's interesting how your being is similar to my noble phantasm. A tool that made me a danger to other mages. Really? What is the name of it? That's a story for another time. Because now, Medea said as she summoned a few spell circles while smiling at Issei. It's time to train. Later. Ow. Well, hold still while I heal you. It's your fault for charging into my attacks, thinking you could take them. To be honest, it looked cooler in my head. Medea giggled at her master while healing his burns, which made Issei smile at the witch as she tended to his injuries with a warm smile because she wanted to, not because she was his servant. As she tended to him, Issei began to ponder about his dreams and how he wanted to become a hero who wasn't like those self-righteous heroes in his shows who were stupid, and replied with cliché lines like, with my friends here, I know we can win. Or friendship is real magic. He also didn't want to become the overlord villains who were often cliché and dull. Still, he had to admit that some of the villains in his shows he respected, like Aizen as a villain due to his goals and ambitions to stand as a god, unlike Ewich, a man who wanted to stop the concept of death but became the thing he hated most. The path of being in the middle of a neutral character. Similar to Issei's favorite anti-villain, Greed from FMA. At first, the homunculus was seen as a villain, but eventually, the show revealed that Greed wasn't evil. He just did what he wanted and still cared about those who stood by his side. Ultimately, Greed wanted a family and friends who loved him back and would do anything to protect them, even if that meant killing. The path of a harem king will be long and filled with obstacles. It was a thought that made him laugh, but one that he was now determined to work hard for. I don't know what the supernatural world holds, but with magic, I have some protection against it. Issei grimly thought he was happy and satisfied to learn about magic and that it was real. It had also proven that the world was not what it seemed and that the supernatural still existed and was as accurate as anything on Earth. The monsters that kill for entertainment, the devils that seek to corrupt the pure and damn them for eternity, the vampires that wooed their prey with supernatural charms and fed on their lifeblood, and so many more, the world seemed to become more dangerous. Damn, you and your moonlit world. Issei thought all joy was now gone, filled with dread and fear, as he remembered the monsters of the moonlight world. He knew they were fictional and thus had no reason to fear. Medea could read this due to the bond of being his servant, but stayed silent as she continued to listen to him. But with the existence of magic, he was unsure whether the depictions were authentic or the reality was even worse. He dared not think too optimistically about the supernatural, as even in folklore, they wore masks upon masks of lies and deceit. He was a bit scared, he would admit, but now Issei had some minor protection against them in the form of magic, and Issei knew that to protect himself better, Issei would work his ass off because he refused to let the supernatural stand in the way of his goals. Not again. I vowed to become a harem king and the greatest magus. I promised that voice that I would become a hero of my choosing and not let her down. Especially after the gift she gave to me before I summoned Medea. Issei thought, his face full of determination. I refuse to let the supernatural get the better of me until I become a harem king and fondle the perfect pair of breasts. Medea had to bite her tongue so she wouldn't laugh at the comment while rolling on the grass and avoiding Issei while listening to his thoughts. While his thoughts were not what you would say average, they did strengthen his will and fuel his desire to become a neutral hero. At that moment, Issei looked outside his window and gazed upon the sun, and strangely, it became a full moon, shining in the clear sky as he made his solemn vow. I vow upon the sun and moon itself and stake my pride and goal of becoming the harem king and the greatest hero the world has ever seen. Issei proclaimed, staking his dreams, which he regarded as more precious than his life. I will surpass the threats that the moonlit world will throw at me. From now on, I will prepare myself to face everything the moonlight world offers and overcome them, but will the moonlight be ready for me? Issei said, as if questioning the sun and moon itself, asking whether they would challenge his claim. As if in response to his words, the sun and moon shined brighter as they seemed to accept his vow. Ready or not, world, here comes the future harem king. Issei thought, gazing at the blue moon in the sky before it slowly became the sun again. Issei turned away from it to see Medea wheezing heavily on the ground, as if she were dying of laughter. Are you okay, Medea? Medea slowly stood up as she panted but nodded in reply as she walked over to Issei and continued to dry heave, as if she was still laughing, until she brought Issei down with her on the grass, which made Issei chuckle at her actions, before the witch laid on top of his chest and smiled at him with a cheeky grin. So, Mr. Harem King, would you let this cute witch be the first? Of course, though, I do have to warn you I am a pervert and was recently hurt by Rainer. I don't mind if you are a pervert. As long as you control yourself, it's fine, I'm a pervert, so it works out for both of us. And as for that woman, no, I'll make sure to burn away any trace of her in your mind and soul, so when I'm done, you'll only have eyes for me. I'll support the harem dream, but no, I'll test the girls to see if they are good enough to be in it. Medea said as she ate Issei's once more, and Issei felt the warmth of the sun envelop his body, mind, and soul, as he thought Rainer's presence left his being more and more. Damn. With S like that, I'll probably fall for you sooner than later. So why stop now? Let my love warm and consume you in the fires of my heart. Medea said as Issei ate her, which made the witch mule enjoy as she liked the, as well as the hands of her master wrapping around her waist and going to her rear, which made her smile as she allowed it and loved the touch of her master. This marked the beginning of the hero. I'm quite surprised your parents were okay with you being alone with me for the summer break, Medea said as she was walking alongside her master, getting some groceries after Issei's parents told him that they would be leaving for the summer break. Issei accepted the responsibility of taking care of the house with Medea, while the caster was looking forward to the possibility of assisting her master in getting stronger and understanding his sacred gear. Well, they did trust me, but I think they also trusted you more, since you are a very responsible person, Issei said as Medea giggled at this before smiling at him as they continued heading home. Thank you, my love. I'm hoping that this will be very fruitful, since we'll have the whole house to ourselves. Medea said as she made circles on his chest, which made Issei blush a bit at the flirtatious caster. Medea smiled at the sight of him before the two were able to make it to the neighborhood. They got to the house and put away the groceries. The two then decided to head to the abandoned warehouse district, since the two wanted some privacy, as they learned about Issei's sacred gear after unlocking his magic. Okay, so I was able to unlock my unique magic, but I'm not sure about what my sacred gear is, Issei said as Medea pondered what to do before looking into his soul. It appears that the sacred gear has been unlocked, but something seems to be blocking it. Perhaps by picturing the sacred gear within your soul, you can summon the sacred gear. Medea said as Issei nodded as he sat in a magic circle that Medea made for him before Issei closed his eyes and focused on diving into his soul. My sacred gear, Issei said in his mind as he began to look into the soul, so he could see it or at least picture it. At first, he saw nothing, but then he felt a massive amount of energy begin to appear within his soul. It was as if a massive explosion of magic filled him, as his mind began to show countless creatures and such, until Issei felt complete, as his eyes widened to see that an enormous amount of magic surrounded his body. Media was amazed by the amount of magic that the boy was releasing, since there was so much of it inside of his soul the whole time. Incredible. So this is the power that a sacred gear contains. It's even greater than most of the mages I had seen back in the Holy Grail Wars. Media said in awe as the magic around Issei seemed to form into a shape of sorts. A golem-like creature emerged from the magic, as it seemed to be alive but not moving. Issei walked towards the golem and placed his hand on it. The creature moved into Issei's hand, as if it were a pet wanting attention from its master. The book that Issei had to help him unlock his magic began to flip multiple pages until it stopped to reveal a page on sacred gears. Sacred gear class. Longinus. Wait, a Longinus? Issei said as he continued to read the book. It showed him that the Longinus class sacred gears are those with the power to kill a god. This fact shocked Issei and Media as they couldn't believe that the power Issei had the potential to kill a god, but what surprised them even more was the name and powers of Issei's sacred gear. Annihilation Maker. One of the 13 Longinus, Annihilation Maker is considered to be one of the biggest bugs in the sacred gear system, having world-class powers that could destroy the world when used in the wrong hands. This fact shocked Issei as he was surprised to hear that his sacred gear was one of the most potent weapons in the world. The Annihilation Maker grants the user the ability to create an assortment of creatures from their shadows and based on their imagination. As such, the more influential the user's imagination, the more powerful the beast is upon its creation. The process of creating these creatures goes as follows. 1. Shadows appear from under the user's feet. 2. The shadows grow to the appropriate size based on what the user is trying to create. 3. Parts of the shadow break off and the desired monsters come out of them. 4. The monsters act according to the user's will. Media was impressed by this since she did recall that there was a caster who hated humans and had the desire to make powerful golems that would be able to cleanse the earth. Issei was surprised by that as he continued his reading. Anti-monsters. A special type of monsters that the sacred gear specializes in creating, which are monsters that have abilities that target the opponent's weaknesses. Issei pondered this aloud as he looked at the golem that he had summoned before looking at the next page to see that it was revealed to have the abilities of an ordinary golem that was earth-based. Issei then decided to test out an experiment as he tapped on the golem's picture and then modified its powers and form, which made the golem shift as it became more human-sized. The golem also had now been given steel armor to make its armor more durable. So I can modify and picture what I want the creature to not only look like, but also what abilities it is capable of. This will be helpful in the long run. Issei said as Media nodded in agreement before asking him. That's impressive, Master, but I do believe we should do some more tests on your sacred gear, so you can not only visualize what kind of creatures you want to serve you, but also how they can protect you from harm, Media explained as Issei pondered this before he began to consider what to do. If we had a base of sorts, we would be able to not only have a fortress for us to reside in, but also so we could defend ourselves against our enemies. Do you have any ideas? Issei asked as Media pondered as she had met other heroes before in the Throne of Heroes until she smiled as one appeared in her mind. I have an idea, but we will need a body for the spirit. Master, can you summon a golem of a beautiful girl if I give you a description of them? Media asked as Issei raised a brow and replied. Why yeah, I can do that. I may have drawn the type of woman that I like for a while now, so I have some experience. Issei said as Media smiled at this and nodded. Good. Then I need you to summon a golem that will allow a servant to use their full power. Media said as Issei opened his sketchbook and nodded. Alright. Hit me with her description. Tall woman with snow white skin, amber eyes, long midnight black hair, long pointed ears like an elf. Looks almost like a MILF. Media explained as Issei began to draw the woman his partner had described before showing it to her. What do you think? Issei asked as Media gasped as she saw a perfect copy of the one that she had planned on summoning. This is perfection. I might say you should definitely consider drawing for your career or maybe making an anime. Your drawings are amazing. Media complimented as Issei blushed at the praise from her until Media asked for the assassin card. Issei handed it to her. So we'll be doing a golem summon. You know, call upon a soul to host the golem's body. Issei asked as Media shook her head. That is tempting, but even for a golem body, she won't be able to use her full power to summon her noble phantasm. That's why I was thinking that if you can create an incredible drawing from a description, then I believe you can summon her. Care to give it a shot? Media asked as Issei nodded in reply before they prepared the summoning ritual. Issei closed his eyes and began the chant the same as he did before when summoning Medea until the magic from his sacred gear began to create a shadow as a woman slowly began to emerge from it until the card shined in a rainbow light before the magic exploded. Issei and Medea covered their eyes as they looked to see that the shadow went back to Issei. A tall woman looked towards Issei, just as Medea had described her before. The woman walked towards him and asked, "Are you my master? I am the wise queen of Assyria. Semiramis. Is there a throne for me?" Semiramis asked as Issei nodded before using his sacred gear to summon a suitable throne that made the queen smile as she then sat down and got comfortable in it. "How wonderful. And I assume Medea is the one who summoned you? I'm quite surprised that you were able to summon 2 servants." Semiramis said before Medea explained the situation they were in, which surprised Semiramis since the fact that the Holy Grail war didn't exist in this world was a shock due to the powers of said Grail. "So you summoned me so this boy could have a base of his own to learn how to use his powers and defend himself from the supernatural world?" Semiramis asked as Medea nodded in response. "Correct. Issei has incredible powers and needs a place where he'll be safe without anyone trying to talk his power for themselves. Plus, this is a chance for you to live your life without having to worry about war." Medea said as Semiramis pondered this before sighing. "Okay, I'll do it, and I would like to assist Issei in his training as well, since I believe I can help him be more successful in his training," Semiramis said as she had to admit that the boy was adorable, given the memories she had seen from her new master. She was amused by the dream that the boy had in mind, since it wasn't for illicit reasons, but so Issei would shower the women he had with his big heart. Issei smiled at the tall woman and was amazed by her beauty until Semiramis and Medea began to make preparations for the noble phantasm since, thanks to Issei's massive reserves of magic, it would only take a day and a half, unlike the 3 days it usually takes to summon the noble phantasm. Issei had also undergone some training in using his sacred gear since he wanted to learn how to properly make powerful creatures and such to assist the massive fortress that Semiramis told him about. Maybe if I can make something else instead of a golem, then maybe I can create something like a guardian for the fortress," Issei said as he began to picture what he should draw until Issei felt like he should be able to draw something that would not only help his new base, but also himself against a fallen angel, especially Rainer. Issei clenched his fist as he tried to get rid of her image in his mind until he felt her arms wrap around his waist. "It's okay, Issei. It's okay. Calm down and let me comfort you," Medea said as she sensed Issei's fear and concerns about wanting to help out and get stronger as well. Issei's breathing calmed down as Medea heard his heart begin to settle down until Issei's body relaxed. Medea was glad that Issei was doing much better now that he was letting his mind and spirit relax since the sting of Rainer and what happened to him was a massive change for him. Medea remembered that he was just a teenager who was killed by a force that he didn't even know existed until he was given a second chance to live and become a hero. Medea could tell that Issei does want to get stronger, but she could also mean that Issei is trying to recall his past death, which was uncomfortable for anyone to talk about. That is why Medea went for the physical touch approach, as she knew that Issei needed to see that he wasn't alone or dead but alive, so Medea was happy to provide the warmth and comfort that Issei needed as support. "It's okay, Issei. I am here and I'll make sure that she never hurts you again. I promise. Why don't you take a break from your magic drawing and try summoning a familiar? Every mage has a familiar and they may be able to help you become stronger," Medea said as Issei pondered this and liked the idea before thanking Medea. "Thanks, Medea. You are the best," Issei said as Medea chuckled and ed his before she began to help him relax on her lap while Semiramis walked over to the duo and smiled at them. "All preparations have been completed. We should head back to Issei's home so he can rest," Semiramis said as Medea nodded and let her cloak envelop the 3 of them as their magic was wiped without a trace. But as Issei was preparing himself to face the supernatural world, other forces began to make their move. "How's Brigade? So you mean to tell me that you lost against a child?" Cao Cao asked. "How is that possible for someone like you, Heracles?" The subordinate in question, Heracles, was looking to the ground in shame. Even when the man was far more significant than Cao Cao, he felt himself so much smaller in the direction of his leader's stern glare. Heracles himself could not believe the shame he had in failing his mission. "The boy was far stronger than we thought, Lord Cao Cao," Heracles debriefed his encounter with Darius IV. "His power is something that I never imagined. He was too fast for me even to land a single hit on him and he wasn't so pleased to join us." Cao Cao rose a brow at that. It was not a strong interest, but what would make a boy not want to join his organization? Indeed, it wasn't the first time people would refuse to join, with Arthur being one of the more sore rejections. But what did this one boy know? "He is unlike anything I've ever seen," Heracles spoke. "Powerful, and yet he seems to be a small child. I have no idea what his power could be. You said his name is Darius IV, Cao Cao said with a hum. His name could give us a clue. It's possible he's a descendant of a hero and named himself after such, but some research will have to be conducted to find out. We shouldn't worry about that boy anymore, Heracles said in a rare moment of conviction. Instead of chasing after some more recruits, we should focus more on avenging George, who died because of that bastard Susanoo. Heracles spoke as he slammed his fist on the table. His immense strength caused spiderweb cracks to appear all over the surface. Nearby, Jean looked at the large man with wide eyes. Cao Cao, however, looked as if nothing had happened and sighed deeply. I wish to see vengeance for our fallen comrade, Cao Cao said neutrally. But we lack the resources to launch an attack against the Yaokai faction. They have Shinto gods and the Monkey King, Sun Wukong, in their little corner. We will attack when we gain more comrades in the next couple of weeks. For now, we'll need to wait for our spies to send us information on what these children are capable of, so we can convince them that they are fighting on the wrong side. Cao Cao said as he stood up and lifted his spear. We are the humans who shall save humankind from the sins that the supernatural has brought to many of our brothers and sisters. That is why we are the ones who shall purge the sins of humankind by eliminating the root cause of it all. Even the biblical factions will stand against us, so in order to save humanity, we must use their enemies to destroy them. Is that why you're working with that old Mao member? Heracles asked skeptically. Of course. Rizavim may be a devil of the old Mao. Still, he has valuable knowledge about the weaknesses of the new Mao, the Grigori, and the system of heaven, as well as possible recruits that we can have to join our cause. Cao Cao said before walking over to Heracles and patting his shoulder. Listen, Heracles. What I'm doing is for the sake of all humanity. Sometimes, I must sin in order to save humanity. You understand, don't you? Heracles nodded. Of course. To Heracles, there wasn't much to think about. To him, it was a simple thing to ponder. Cao Cao offered a road to a better place for humanity. And a better place for humankind meant a better world for them. It was that type of simple thinking that didn't let Heracles continue more deeply on the matter and make his way out. Excellent, Cao Cao said. Take some time off to recover and do not worry about the boy. I shall inform office of this matter when she comes to see me, so take a load off and maybe train a bit. Heracles sighed to himself as he began to walk back to his quarters. As he sunk into the machinations of his mind and thought, he was only broken out as his phone began to ring. Heracles looked at the contact info and smiled at the caller's identity before answering the video call. When he did, he saw a blue-haired girl with amber eyes who looked like she was in her last year of middle school. A teenage boy was standing next to her. He had dark brown hair and eyes and was the same age as a certain blonde-haired witch on his team. Hey Amanda. Marcus. How are my little soldiers doing today? Heracles asked as he made it to his room and lay on his bed. He began to listen to the two discuss their day, which made the hero smile as he looked forward to this event every week. The two teenagers Heracles was speaking to were his little siblings, whom he's protected since they were little. Ever since they were kids, Heracles was the oldest and took his role as a big brother seriously. With his literal gigantic size, he did everything he could to keep them safe from the supernatural. But despite the gifts of his birth, including his sacred gear, even Heracles knew he couldn't protect Marcus and Amanda forever. As the three were orphans, Heracles could never give them the everyday life they should have had, like school. For most of Heracles' early life, he never had a house for his family, forcing them to always be on the move. Then, as if answering his prayers, Cao Cao came to him with his offer into the hero faction. Cao Cao promised Hercules that by joining his group, he would be helping them build a brand new world where his siblings could live in peace. How could he not accept such a deal? Not only did he get the chance to master his sacred gear, but he was able to get his little brother and sister into a proper home. And yet there were moments that Heracles didn't like about the hero faction, especially the brainwashing of the new members. Cao Cao, however, explained to him that they were still doing the right thing, despite all the terrible things he's seen with this group. Between the shady acts and the missions Heracles went on, he didn't feel like a hero most of the time. Yet, all Cao Cao was that it came down to purging the sins and lies of the supernatural upon them all. Sometimes, Cao Cao would be a broken record going on curse the devils this and make the angels pay that. Heracles didn't like to talk about his work that much, but he still made sure to keep in touch with his siblings and make sure that they weren't involved in anything dangerous. They both were glad to have such a wonderful big brother. He's always been their protective giant with his larger than average size. His kind and warm personality inspired Marcus to want to become like his big brother one day, so he could help him. It gladdened Heracles' heart just a little. Heh. That's great to hear. I'm glad you two are staying out of trouble. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Heracles said with a light laugh as he kept talking to his siblings, unaware of the ones watching him. Do you really think he's going to continue following you, Lord Cao Cao? Jean asked as she looked away from the video, while Cao Cao looked at the file in his hands on the newest members of the Yaokai faction. Heracles is a simple person, Cao Cao said as he put down the file and looked at the chessboard in front of him. Not much of a thinker, but an excellent brute that can obey my commands. As long as he's simple-minded, he's a good rook to have on our board. The hero faction is pure and righteous, since we will purge the plague that the supernatural world has brought to us in the many years, which is why it's best to have our strongest assets close to us. Cao Cao continued as he tapped the White King and Queen. Myself and Office. The White King and Queen will not only be able to take the supernatural world by storm, but will be able to crush any foe who tries to stop us. After all, Office only cares about defeating Great Red and reclaiming her silence in the dimensional gap. While I give her the results that keep her happy, the Dragon God of Infinity supplies us with the snakes that are beneficial for the Cow's Brigade, including empowering our weapons. Cao Cao then tapped on the knight pieces beside the Queen and King. The knights are always the most loyal members of our community, which is why I consider you, Jean, and Siegfried to be the most loyal members that I trust with my life. Cao Cao's words had the desired effects on Jean, whose cheeks sported a bright blush. She truly felt honored by the terms of her master, and it was a hint of the fanaticism she had for the perceived strongest human. Her inner thoughts were caught off when Cao Cao tapped on the bishop pieces of the board. One of the pair was knocked over and was replaced by another bishop piece of a different color. Even though we lost Georg, we still have Leonardo, who's working on creating his army of golems for the upcoming attack. Marsilio is practicing his illusion magic and his sacred gear, which should prove useful enough to replace Georg's now empty. The way Cao Cao spoke made it seem he carried sorrow for their fallen friend. The silence only lasted a moment before he motioned to the rook pieces, with there only being one on the board. Now, as for the rooks, Heracles may think he's our only member, but I have 2 others on standby, courtesy of our devil comrade, just in case he betrays us. Cao Cao said. Cao Cao was confident that Heracles betraying him was almost non-existent. He was too loyal, or instead, he was too gullible, eating at his words. The only thing to threaten his allegiance would be Heracles' sister. She was too smart for her good despite the small calls Heracles had with the girl. The one time they ever did meet, Cao Cao knew Amanda never trusted him if the stink eye she gave him was any indication. As simple and gullible as Heracles was, his love for his family would ultimately outweigh his loyalty to Cao Cao. If he really came down it, Cao Cao will do what he must, even if it leaves a slight bitter taste in his mouth. He liked him better when he had actual use to him. Keep an eye on Heracles and report if you believe he will betray us. If you believe so, Cao Cao ordered. Jean nodded and walked out of the room. Once the former exorcist was out of sight, Cao Cao turned to the back room of the meeting hall, where 2 people were suspended in glass chambers filled with a light green fluid. The first was a black-haired individual who was a regular human that his partner had taken when he learned that the boy had an incredible magic that flowed unnaturally into his muscular structure. This allowed him to gain great physical strength, speed, and endurance to become a threat to any Satan-level threat. After many different tests on the boy, he was now a literal berserker who only lived off serving its master. The second was a slim and toned young man of average height with short white hair styled in a bowl cut and possessing large black eyes. He was a selfish pig who saw women as the only members who shined all the time over the tiniest things and enjoyed the fun of killing people who fought back only to die by his hands. Unfortunately, he caught the eye of the devil, who experimented on the boy so he could have more strength to enjoy torturing even stronger opponents in his future battles. Soon, my berserkers. Soon, you'll be able to enjoy the thrill of fighting strong enemies in the name of humanity. Cao Cao said as he left the room before the 2 figures' hands twitched as if they heard their master. The hero faction was readying itself for battle without knowing of the other forces that were involved. TCH. To think that faker who calls himself Heracles was trying to recruit me to join his band of fake heroes. A voice said the person who was speaking was none other than a boy who looked to be 10 years old while wearing a crown of sorts on his head. The boy looked as if he was 10 years old, but in truth, the boy was far older than he appeared to be, since he was a cursed person, a boy who was cursed because of a disaster that destroyed his home after he was kicked out of his house. A disaster that the boy caused himself when he was just 10 years old. Adem Madish was a child born into a royal family, however, this child was seen as a black sheep and was kicked onto the streets, saying it was where a cursed street rat belonged. Adem was enraged and swore revenge on his family. In that rage, a spirit spoke to him, one who had committed much bloodshed in his past. He promised Adem revenge against his family and revenge he received. However, he had leveled the entire kingdom in his wrath, making the Hindu god curse the boy with immortality, forcing him to walk the earth for all eternity. Adem sighed. The kingdom of Karak was a thriving kingdom, one much larger than the kingdom this Taj Mahal is located in. Adem soon clenched his fist as a massive being behind the boy began to sense his rage. But then my father became the next king of Karuk and everything went to hell. The being was curious about this as the boy continued to recall his past. It's an ironic story, really, one that's almost like a fairy tale. A child born in a royal family, however, this child was seen as a black sheep and was kicked onto the streets, saying it was where a cursed street rat like him belonged. The boy was enraged and swore revenge on his family. In that moment of rage, a spirit spoke to him, one who had committed much bloodshed in his past. He promised the boy revenge against his family and revenge he received. Adam said as he held his axes high up in the sky with a smile of joy until it vanished when he continued to speak. However, he had leveled the entire kingdom in his wrath, making the Hindu gods of destruction curse the boy with immortality, forcing him to walk the earth for all eternity. That is the story of the Forgotten Kingdom Karuk and how the black sheep of the Madish family got his revenge, but is now cursed with regret in his heart for all eternity. The being began to take upon a physical form as they remained silent for a moment before he spoke. Do you regret killing your family for your mistreatment, partner? And what about the people of the kingdom? Did they not help you when you were thrown into the streets? Adam was silent as he processed the questions he was asked before standing up and nodding. I regret killing the people of my kingdom who helped me when I was thrown into the streets, but I do not regret killing my family. I had no siblings, and my bastard of a father killed my mother, so in a way, I avenged my mother's death. Besides my people's unfair death, I have no other regrets. Adam said as he stood up and put away his axes. What is the point of leaving my kingdom? I'm immortal. I'm forever in a 10-year-old body that only knows how to kill and destroy. I have no purpose. All I do is do more harm than good, so please. I wish to regret my actions in peace. Adam said as the being kneeled to the boy and patted his back. I understand your pain, young Adam. Rage can blind a person and they'll do something that they will regret. I've seen that happen to many others who were like me. Letting one's rage consume them to gain power after losing so much, but never forget that even some of us who are immortal can still feel sadness, so it's okay to let your fears out. That being said, Adam cried tears while yelling into the void that was once his home, while the being known as Darius III smiled as he partied the boy's back and comforted him. The teenage girl with foxtails was looking at the full moon in the night sky while sitting on top of a mansion. She then looked at a mirror in her hands and saw the power that radiated off the relic. I don't want to hide this from my mother, but if I told her what I was doing, then I'm not sure how the Shinto gods would react. Especially Lady Amaterasu. The girl said as she fiddled with the mirror and looked at her reflection. She saw that she was filled with power, and that power was what allowed her to save herself from the ones who tried to kidnap her until Lord Susanoo arrived to get her to safety. I figured you'd be up here, Susanoo said as the girl was shocked at this, before the god of storms calmed her down. Take it easy, Princess Kunu. I'm not going to tell your mother about the mirror, nor will I tell my sister. Kunu sighed in relief as she was grateful for Susanoo keeping her secret until the man sat next to her and asked. You still have some nightmares of what happened? Susanoo asked as Kunu clenched her right hand and she nodded in response. I get it. You took a life for the first time and you are scared you'll lose control again, but there's a difference in that situation. You were protecting yourself against people who wanted to kidnap you. Susanoo said as he saw the fox girl look at him in wonder before he continued to explain. I've seen many children with power kill for the first time and they had many nightmares or moments where they call themselves a monster, but let me ask you this, Kunu. Did you enjoy killing him? Susanoo asked as Kuno mumbled some words while shaking her head. Did you want to kill the others? No, but I knew they would have tried to kidnap me, so I just tried to stop them, Kunu said as Susanoo pulled her into a side hug before he patted the girl's head. Believe it or not, I'm afraid to kill at times as well, Susanoo said, much to Kunu's shock, as the god continued. There have been times when I felt fear, sadness, anger, or even despair. I know that I have so much power, but as a god, I can't have the luxury of having a lover, a child, or even a friend, since I've had many of those, but they all had one thing in common. They all died before me. Immortality is what people think of as a gift, but in truth, once you really see the consequences of that gift, then you'll know it's a curse. However, some blessings come with that gift. I'm able to help so many lives and people. That includes you too, little princess. Kunu smiled in thanks as she hugged the god of storms before Susanoo smiled at the girl. He then summoned his staff and looked at her. So, shall we continue to train you in using your powers? Susanoo asked as his response from Kunu came in the form of a fox girl releasing her power, while her attire changed to match a Shinto priestess, with the mirror floating near her. I'm ready, Susanoo Oni, Kunu said as Susanoo chuckled at her and nodded. Alright then. Let's begin. And so the night was filled with fire, ice, and lightning as the god of storms continued teaching the princess of the Yokai how to use her power before the ones who attempted to kidnap her returned to try again. The next evening. The next day was very productive for Issei, since he was able to get some more training in with his sacred gear and personal magic, thanks to Medea summoning some soldiers for Issei to practice his impact magic on before Semiramis began to help Issei with gaining immunity to different poisons and education on the legends of his world. Who would have thought a queen would make an excellent teacher? As the second day of his summer ended for the night, Issei had gotten into his pajamas before seeing Semiramis preparing a teleportation circle. Heading back to the garden now that it's fully operational. Issei asked as Semiramis turned back to see him and replied. Just doing some light maintenance and making sure that no one will be able to see the garden now that it's fully manifested. I'll be fine. I promise. Semiramis said as she at her master's forehead. Issei then hugged her, which made the assassin smile before she gently hugged him back, while being careful not to stab him with the spikes in the palms of her hands. Please be safe, Semiramis, Issei said as the assassin enjoyed this moment before seeing Medea wasn't around to see them before she decided to be bold and at Issei's with just her dot. No tongue or teeth as Issei blushed at the much older woman until she moved away and smiled with the moon, making her body seem heavenly, as if she was an angel from heaven. That is my promise to you, Issei Haidu, my master, that I shall return safely. The assassin said as Issei couldn't speak but just nodded in reply before returning to his room. Semiramis felt her heart continue to beat soundly within her chest. Master Issei. I will make sure your dream becomes a reality. Issei then made it back to his room as he saw Medea sitting on his bed and patting her lap. Come on, master. Let me give you a lap pillow to help you go to sleep. The caster said before Issei nodded as he was now on her lap, while Medea smiled at her master before running a hand through his hair, which made Issei feel excellent but tired as he thought the events of the day caused his mind and body to shut down. He's slowly getting better. I'm glad that he's taking his role seriously, but I do wonder if this is another Emiya in the making. Medea asked herself with concern as she was hoping that Issei Haidu didn't become another version of Emiya, the boy who wanted to become a hero. Still, in his quest to become one, he slowly lost his humanity and became a guardian. As a guardian, he was able to save lives. Still, the caster knew that the archer was doing his job and hoped that he could make his dream a reality, but sadly, that ended with him giving up on his dream and ideals when he learned the cold, hard truth that the world he wanted to build wasn't actual and would never come to be. Medea looked at her master's sleeping face before gently rubbing his left cheek and smiling to herself. I'll never let you down, nor will I see you fall, Medea pondered to herself as she slowly took Issei into the futon large enough for them both and snuggled next to him. Rest now, Issei Haidu. Your first and faithful servant shall be here to serve and guide you on your journey. Medea said as she made a vow to herself that night. I'll never let this boy become a machine. Medea said as she was looking through the familiar summoning ritual and bit her tongue as she had a feeling that tomorrow would be a change for Issei, since Medea had been planning on doing the familiar ritual to help Issei, since Medea may be good with the sacred gear Annihilation Maker, since it's similar to her creating dragon tooth soldiers, but new. She couldn't help her master become stronger on physical terms, which is why she decided to help her master by getting Issei a familiar that will help him. And now is the time for the plot to really begin. Issei was in the middle of the living room, looking at his cards on the middle of the floor, before picking them up one at a time in hopes that he could get a clear image of the servant that was connecting to him. I know I can feel the servant from the cards connecting to me, but I wish I could get a better image of them, so I know how to implement their skills to help me and the garden security, Issei said as he was sitting outside in the garden that Semiramis was working on last evening. The assassin was happy to introduce Issei to the massive flying fortress and its capabilities, as well as the defenses of the said fortress, which had Issei in awe while observing the power that the fortress was capable of when it fought or defended itself. Issei especially loved the garden as he felt a comforting presence envelop his body that put him at ease, similar to when Issei was a child, and enjoyed the forest where he played and relaxed at times. I take it you are enjoying the garden? Semiramis asked as Issei smiled and replied to her. I am. Thank you for letting Medea and me come here to see it with our own eyes. I wouldn't have believed how powerful it was from the stories Medea told me about the garden unless I saw it with my own eyes. Issei said as Semiramis giggled with a hand over her mouth. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Mind if I ask what you are trying to do? Semiramis asked as Issei explained his actions. I'm trying to figure out the servants that are connecting to me from the cards, but all I see are a glimpse into their past or their weapons, Issei said as he picked up the saber card but didn't see much besides the same sword that he saw all those years ago. Perhaps it's because you're not focusing on the servant you're trying to summon. Medea said as she floated down towards Issei. There are many servants in the throne of heroes, so it's possible that you need to focus on just one servant at a time and use that picture to call out to them. Similar to how you summoned Semiramis and me. Issei pondered this as he looked at the shielder card before closing his eyes and muttered the name. Shielder, Issei said as his eyes became wider and he felt an image pop into his mind. The tall red-haired man chiseled with muscle, wielded a spear and a shield as he banged his two armaments together. His men of 300 took to formation as they prepared for the assault against a marching army of Persians that numbered in the millions, or presumably even a billion in number. But despite the odds being stacked against them, they held out and never faltered as they stood their ground. Thermopylae and Emosha. Issei's right hand then moved on its own to Lancer as a new image appeared in his mind. Lonely? No, I am not. Though I am confined to the land of shadows, I've had many young aspiring warriors gather as my students, after all. The woman said as she had long, wavy purple hair as she sat on her throne, looking at the sky as her crimson red eyes glowed in the land of shadows, yearning for death from one who could give her that satisfaction as a human, but due to her being a godslayer, the warrior could no longer feel human, so after training her son and student, she resided in the land of shadows, waiting for her end to come. Issei came back to reality as he knew who to summon, so he picked up the two cards before calling out to his caster. Medea. Prepare a summoning circle. It's time to summon our newest members. Issei said as Medea smiled at her master before Issei spoke to her. Medea. How are the preparations for the familiar summoning ceremony? Are the security measures in place? Issei asked, as he knew that Medea had been working during the morning to not only set up the summoning ritual, but also finish setting up the appropriate barriers and charms to not only hide the summoning, but also to trap the summoned creature if it turned hostile. The summoning this time was still a familiar ritual, but tweaked a bit so that it could help Issei control some of the more hostile creatures. Medea had recommended completely binding the summoned creature to his will, but Issei decided that he would only do it if the creature turned out to be truly hostile. Still, he did set up some countermeasures just in case. The ritual is ready, should you wish to summon your familiar first before the servants, Medea said as Semiramis suggested that it would be a good idea for Issei to undergo the familiar ritual first before the servants, since if the familiar he summons would be able to help his training in origin magic. Okay. Let's do it. Medea. Have the countermeasures ready, just in case. Semiramis, you'll keep an eye on the ritual from the throne room to make sure that the defenses are ready just in case the familiar breaks free. Issei ordered as Medea and Semiramis nodded as they got to their destination and prepared for the ritual. Magic testing room. Issei was standing next to Medea, who was ready with the countermeasures to face the beast until the caster nodded his way. Alright then. Issei then took a deep breath as he readied himself for the risky summoning before nodding back to Medea. Here we go. With the book in hand, Issei began to chant the lines for the summoning. This time, even if it was a familiar ritual, Issei felt that the drain was not as extreme as he had felt summoning Medea and Semiramis. He reckoned that it might be because of the difference in power between the two rituals. While that was a bit disappointing, Issei was glad that he wouldn't be facing a powerhouse in case things went south. The circle shimmered and glowed with power as Issei kept on chanting. Sparks began to fly, and the runes that Medea set up began to light up as Issei felt the circle perform its task. The symbols on the circle glowed and began to move clockwise and anti-clockwise in a slow rhythmic pace and gaining speed as Issei kept on chanting. Blurring and changing their form as the symbols floated in the air in a brilliant display of colors. The air began to hum in a melodic tune as it weaved and circled the symbols, gaining a distinct red hue. Arise as I command thee, arise and bind yourself to me and accept me as thy master for eternity. Arise. Issei chanted and shouted the last lines of the spell as the symbols responded by twisting in the air and shattering in a display of bright blue lights, which began to converge and merge. Then, in a flash, the blue light slammed into the ground like lightning, scorching it and forming a familiar seal in the ground. Issei looked at the seal and knew what it was. He intimately knew the seal as it was one that Zelrich had written greatly about in the book. It was a seal, representing one of the 72 pillars of the underworld, a seal that indicated the arrival of the demons of hell. Medea. Semiramis. Get ready. Issei shouted at his servants as the seal began to light up. In his mind, there was no doubt that the creature that he had summoned was a demon, and he knew that he would need their help in binding the creature. The seal began to glow with power, and out of it came a devil. Issei, seeing the creature before him, was quite surprised as he had steeled himself to meet a demon whose form was supposed to be terrifying and inhuman. Not the also-human appearance that it donned. The demon spoke with scorn and anger in its voice as it introduced itself. By your summoning, I have come. Ye who have bound me to your will for eternity and beyond, I ask of you, are you my master? Issei could feel the power rolling off the demon, and while terrified of it, he steeled himself to finalize the contract. Yes, I am Issei Haidu, your master from here on out till eternity itself, and I command thee to state your name, Issei said, following the advice of Zelrich, who had mentioned that knowing the names of demons went a long way in controlling them. I acknowledge thee as my master, Issei Haidu. As for my name, I am Venelana Gremory. Venelana said as she wore an outfit that showed her royal status and rank before she bowed to Issei and spoke to him. "Thank you, Venelana Gremory. It's an honor to meet you face to face." Issei said as Venelana felt a circle appear on the back of her hand, which appeared to be a flaming skull. "Likewise, now I would like to ask what it is you want with me," Venelana said as Issei explained that he wanted help with his magic since he was able to understand his origin magic but struggled with trying to control it as well as his sacred gear. Venelana was curious about the boy's magic and seeing that he had the sacred gear, Annihilation Maker, made him even more interesting since, with a bit of fine-tuning and training, Issei could become the human version of Seirag. She smiled as she walked up to the big and smiled. "Very well then. I shall assist you with your training, but know that I won't be lenient with you. If you want to get strong enough to stand on your own 2 feet and become a leader, then I'll push you to your limits and help you surpass them. Many underestimated me because I'm a woman, but I am more than capable of defending myself." Venelana said as she released a little bit of her aura, shocking Issei again, as he could tell that this power was not to be underestimated by the user. "Then I look forward to you training me," Issei said as he was going to enjoy the training from a beautiful lady such as her. Venelana smirked at the boy as she thought the boy would take those words back when he experienced her form of training. All in all, it'll be an interesting experience for both of them, as the Gremory Devil is interested in the boy's growth and development as she is able to look at his memories due to the contract they now share. Magic Creation Experimentation Room. "Are you sure about this, Issei? We can always do this tomorrow," Semiramis said as she looked down at Issei, who was strapped to a lab table. Issei then looked at Semiramis with understanding in his eyes as he nodded his head in response. "You know you will undergo tremendous pain if you wish to go through with this," Semiramis said as she had a syringe with a glowing purple toxin of sorts within it, while Issei smiled at her before replying to the Poison Master. "I wish to become a hero and become strong enough to take on my future enemies, but I can't be taken out by cheap poison, so do it. Let my body be reborn anew in the poison." Issei said as he could understand Semiramis's worry for him, but he assured her that he would be fine and survive, since he knew that Semiramis and Medea would always be there by his side to keep him safe from those who would want to use him for their benefits. And Medea would be damned before letting someone try to taint her precious Issei. Semiramis nodded as she injected the poison into Issei's heart, which made him bite into the piece of dragon tooth that was provided for him until his teeth shattered into the fang into pieces as he held in her screams while feeling the poison spread throughout his entire body. His veins glowed purple as Issei felt his body was suffering but being reborn under the effects of the poison's effects until his eyes widened as they shimmered a dark purple light. Issei felt the poison continue to mix with his blood as Semiramis and Medea watched with concern as his sacred gear activated and began to circle Issei as shadow-like creatures roared as if to stop Semiramis or Medea from doing anything. Medea clenched her fists as she watched Issei's body darken a bit and his hair gained a purple streak until Issei gasped loudly as the effect started to die down. Issei panted as Semiramis slowly picked him up before being carried to a pool that had a lime-green glow to it. It was a special pool that had healing properties and could make sure that Issei's body was able to recover from the external pain, but for the internal damage, that was a different story. Issei breathed out as he looked at her new body and felt that it was new and no longer weak like it was before. "I feel so alive, Lady Semiramis. I feel reborn," Issei said as he let the pool begin to soothe his pain while he steadied his breathing, much to Medea's relief as she was happy. He was okay before the witch looked at Venelana, who had a passive look on her face, before the Gremory Devil walked to the boy and asked, "Why do this to yourself? That poison is extremely dangerous, and you could have died." Venelana said as Issei looked at her and replied, "I'm fine, Venelana. Really, I am," Issei said before he felt a blade pointed at his throat, with Venelana looking at him now with shock as she then looked down with her hair covering her eyes. "I see. You really are in pain. I'll make sure I correct that during our training," Venelana said in a tone that surprised Issei before he tried to speak to her. "Venelana. Normally," Venelana shouted as she made sure that Issei was listening to her. A boy that was raised as a normal child wouldn't show no sign of fear when a knife is thrust against his throat. Issei was shocked by this as he saw Semiramis stop Medea from interfering. Venelana then held Issei's head and whispered to him, "Back in the Great War, I saw many children that were trained as soldiers not to show any signs of fear or pain as they underwent so much pain in the experiments on their sides," Venelana said as she continued speaking to him. "I had to fight innocent children that were prepped for war and witnessed them with no signs of fear in their eyes, as if they had already died once and felt no fear of death befalling upon them. So how do you expect me to just not care about a teenage boy who's already experienced death because of this world?" Venelana shouted. Issei was shocked by her words before seeing a memory that Venelana had deep within her mind. Venelana Gremory was standing in the middle of a battlefield that had no signs of life except her own. Venelana held in her hands the body of a little girl with blonde hair. The girl in her arms was just 8 years old and had nothing to do with the war, but the girl wore a priestess uniform, which made the devil cry until she felt a small hand touch her face. In shock, the Grimoire devil looked down to see the girl's eyes open as she smiled at her with the warmth and kindness of a normal girl her age. "Don't cry. I'm happy that I'm finally free. Thank you, Miss Devil," the girl said with a warm and kind smile on her face until she let out a sigh of relief as she closed her eyes and snuggled in the body of the devil, who was still in shock from the girl coming back to life before the words were registered in her head. Then, for the first time since the Great War began, a massive explosion of magic erupted as the Grimoire devil let her sorrows be known to the world, as the Grimoire devil cried to the heavens and the gods, as her way of asking why the children must suffer in this war when they have nothing to do with it. Why must the children be raised in a world that does not care for them? Venelana had tears form in her eyes as Issei then wiped them. "I'm sorry. I guess dying a first time left a bigger impact on me than I thought, but the reason I'm doing this is because I want to change and become better," Issei said as he started to breathe a bit easier due to the stress leaving his body. "That's why I wish to become stronger, so I won't have to feel that pain again. So I want to ask you again, Venelana Grimoire. Will you help me?" Issei asked as Venelana smiled at the boy's eyes and then nodded. "Of course I will. You need someone to make sure you aren't so reckless," Venelana said as Issei smiled in response while Semiramis smiled at the sight before her, since she could tell that the trauma of her master's death still affected him. Still, Issei was turning that into his strength to help him become stronger and better to combat the supernatural forces that he would have to face in the future. "Well then, I suppose it's time to begin the other ritual," Semiramis said as Medea pouted but followed her to prepare the ritual as they left the devil and their master to rest and heal before the summoning ritual to call upon their fellow heroes. A few hours later, Issei was now dressed in some fresh clothes as he thanked Semiramis again with the poison before Medea helped Issei prepare himself for the ritual due to the caster, seeing that he was still weak from the poison in his body. "And this is why I suggested you summon the servants first before you did that crazy ritual with Semiramis," Medea said as Issei chuckled weakly with a hand behind his head. "You make a good point. Medea said as she continued to scold Issei a bit for his recklessness before Semiramis stopped her. "Come on, Medea. Let's leave your master be so he can concentrate on the ritual and not on you scolding him. He is an idiot," Semiramis said as Issei felt insulted by this. "Hey. But that's part of his charm." Semiramis ended as Issei felt like he was getting bullied by his servants before grumbling to himself a bit as Venelana was amused by their interactions. "So you will be attempting another summoning ritual for more heroes like those two?" Venelana asked as Issei nodded and explained how he had a vision about the next servants he would summon, so he decided to go through with it despite his lack of energy due to his body still healing from the internal damage to his body. "Yes. This time, I'll be doing 2 servants, so it's probably going to take a lot out of me," Issei said as he took the 2 cards out of his pack, Lancer and Shielder. He then placed them on the summoning circle before he sat across from them and took a deep breath to relax his body before releasing his power, which amazed Venelana by the amount of power he had deep inside of him. "If I could help him hone his magic and abilities, he might be able to become a super Mayu in the future," Venelana whispered to herself as she watched Issei speak the words he did for the ritual before with Medea. However, unknown to the 4 in the room, 2 other cards began to resonate with the ritual as they slowly began to leave the box that Issei had the other cards for him. The 2 then left the box as one went into the portal and the other one went to his heart, causing the shadows around him to roar with even more power. The cards glowed as Venelana covered her eyes from the light before the magical energy exploded as 3 voices now spoke. "I have arrived from the land of shadows. I am Scathach. Shall I call you master? Leonidas, king of Sparta. At your service. I have come as bidden by the summons. You are the one the others call a master." The voices said as the light faded away to reveal the 3 people who had spoken to Issei. The first was a tall woman with long purple hair and red eyes, and she wore a full body outfit that highlighted her curvy body with metallic shoulder pads. She also wore a mask on the lower half of her face and seemingly protective gear underneath the bodysuit. The second person was a tall, red-haired man chiseled with muscle, wielding a spear and a shield as he banged his 2 armaments together. And finally, the third person was a tall knight of sorts. They wore pitch black armor with red lines going down, strange eyewear covered the knight's eyes as the helmet fell to reveal a mop of hair as white as snow, amber eyes, and pale skin. The servants and Venelana then turned to Issei, who was on his feet but wore different attire, now wearing an outfit similar to that of a general. Issei looked up at them all as he opened his eyes to reveal that one of them was still his normal eye, but the other one was red as blood. "Yes. I am your master. It's an honor to meet you 3. Queen of the land of shadows. Scathach, king of flame. Leonidas, and of course, the fallen king of knights in Britain. Artoria Pendragon. Issei said as he looked to see a blade was pointed between his eyes. Say that again. I dare you. Artoria growled. Issei showed no fear as he lifted his left hand and pushed the sword out of his face. Do I have to put you down like a dog? Issei asked as he tilted his head before Artoria was pulled into the air by many chains. She saw a massive shadow-like beast with a scythe at her throat, ready to slice off her head. The beast wore a red coat with a white diamond design, a tight black skirt, and laced-up white-heeled boots. Know that I'm not going to kill you, but know that who you were in the past means nothing to me. Now, would you comply and play nice, or do I need my bloody rabbit to punish you? Issei asked as his power radiated similarly to Venelana's before Artoria shook her head as Issei snapped his fingers. The chains let her fall to the floor before the rabbit joined Issei at his side, protecting him from the rear. Try to harm or threaten our master again. We dare you. The massive rabbit said as Issei patted the rabbit's head. Before the rabbit caught Issei, his clothes vanished into his normal clothes before he collapsed in the rabbit's arms. Medea quickly flew towards him, much to the shock of the other servants, before Medea looked into his soul and saw what triggered such a transformation. I see. So it's the Avenger that has chosen him. The demon king of the sixth heaven. Oda Nobunaga. Medea said as Artoria, Semiramis, Leonidas, and Scathach were surprised to see that the spirit of the Avenger had chosen this boy to be their host and partner. Medea then saw that he was out of mana and it was only Oda Nobunaga speaking to Artoria. However, raise your sword against him and then I'll punish you, Medea said as she snapped her fingers and lifted Issei with magic before carrying him in her arms to one of the many rooms for him to rest. Venelana, on the other hand, apologized to Semiramis that she had to leave to attend to her duties as a devil, which the poison master understood as Venelana, then left for the Gremory mansion before smiling to herself about the potential the boy has within him. This is going to be a wonderful summer break. Thanks for watching this video. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. Don't forget to support and follow the Nefarious Doctor for writing that awesome fanfic, and also make sure to comment on this story link in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.